Hello everyone, Yesh here, and today we're going to be talking about Iron Man 3. And I know I'm wearing a Captain America shirt, even though we're talking about Iron Man, but I was too lazy to change, so we're going with it. So anyway, Iron Man 3 this is basically the first film that was released after Avengers. So now we're living in a world where has saw Avengers, it's the biggest movie on the planet. Now Marvel has truly cemented themselves as the studio that can make great superhero films. And so there was a lot of hype for Iron Man 3, especially when the trailers came out. I mean, this was the first MCU film to come after the Avengers, and it's Iron Man. Everybody already loves the character. And this when the trailers came out, this didn't seem like a movie that was gonna be like as simple as Iron Man 1, nor as a character study like Iron Man 2 was. Like Iron Man 1 was a really great film, but it's also a very simple kind of story, just more updated. Like it's basically the Moses story, the idea of someone who discovered himself in a cave through creating the Iron Man suit. But it's just updated, for modern times in terms of the technology. And then Iron Man 2 didn't follow that same three-act structure, which I liked, but Iron Man 2 was more of a low key. It was more of a character study, and as such, I see it as more like a Sunday afternoon kind of film rather than a Friday night blockbuster. But Iron Man 3, when the trailers came out, Iron Man 3 looked like this was gonna be like the Dark Knight of the trilogy. I mean, the trailers really showed that stakes were high in this movie and that it was trying to talk about the Mandarin. And the Mandarin is one of Iron Man's most. Uh, it's like the Joker to the Dark Knight, the way the Mandarin is to Iron Man in the comics. So there was a lot of hype. I mean, Ben Kingsley, like such a great Oscar award-winning actor, the guy who was Gandhi, was now cast to be this big main superhero villain in the next Iron Man movie. And so there was a lot of hype for this film. A lot of like, this could be the Dark Knight of the Iron Man films. It's coming right after Avengers, Like now that everybody's seen Avengers and love it, they want to see the next Marvel movie now. And I remember when I first saw this movie, I was disappointed. I was disappointed because the trailers made it out to be that stakes are really high. It's a very serious, very dramatic film with Iron Man versus the Mandarin. And spoiler alerts if you haven't seen the movie, but the Mandarin was a fake. Yeah, this movie was directed by Shane Black, and if you know Shane Black, you know he's known for directing action black comedies. Like they're action movies, but they have some dark black comedy. Things like you see a person jump off a building, and you see like one of the bad guys jump off a building and die, and he makes it out to be like a very humorous kind of joke. So Iron Man 3, which we all expected to be the series dramatic film with one of the biggest Iron Man villains in comic book history, and it turns out that it was a fraud. It turns out that the Mandarin didn't exist. According to the story, it was just a persona put on by a different bad guy to basically sell fear and thus the whole, control the world in that way, control people through fear. And so he created the Mandarin that way. But then like that wasn't the only thing. The film, as it slowly progressed, you started to see it as more of a comedy. It was more of an action comedy kind of film. It was something that's more of, nothing like The Dark Knight, but more like a black comedy with some good action, with really good action moments here and there. But when I saw that, I was so disappointed by that twist. I mean, it's like imagine if they teased you The Dark Knight, but instead of seeing the Joker, it turns out that, like one of the most iconic Batman villains, it turns out it was just a fake, a persona. And the real bad guy is just some gangster, some mob boss was the bad guy of the movie that Batman had to take down. The Joker was just a persona that the mob boss put up to control and to instill fear and control others. So Iron Man was the same thing with the Mandarin in Iron Man 3, and it was just and because it's a Shane Black film, there were little things like Christmas in there and stuff like that. So this just felt like a very weird summer blockbuster because of that and a lot of other things within it. And I remember just feeling disappointed, like, wow, after Avengers, I mean, Avengers, one of the best films ever. And then the trailers for Iron Man 3, the trailers truly tricked everyone, made them out like this is going to be like, The Dark Knight. And so nobody saw the twist coming. But, after seeing the film on its own was a disappointment, but over time, after rewatching it, God knows how many times, as part of the MCU, because it's part of it, so you have to see it, I'm starting to appreciate more in terms of how it fits in the MCU. It must have been a very dangerous risk doing that, taking an iconic villain, and the twist is that there was no villain. Like, there is a kind of a secondary villain, but the main villain who we thought was there ended up being a joke. It was a persona. It wasn't real. And I realize now that we're gonna have so many superhero movies where we're gonna see the hero versus the main villain. We're gonna have a lot of films that are gonna explore some dramatic issues. Lots of films that will do comic book villains justice moving forward in the MCU. And perhaps you needed Iron Man 3 to be that film that kind of charmingly pokes fun at the whole superhero genre. I honestly think this is the perfect film to watch for people who are not comic book fans. Like, people who are not that much into the superhero genre, but but because this is something so weird and strange and different from your typical superhero movie that, I mean, that's why you could see someone who's not into the superhero films liking Iron Man 3 a lot, because it kind of pokes fun at the idea of the good guy versus bad guy, the generic like supervillain versus superhero. And it works in that way because of that. I feel though, and I see it as the typical Marvel Christmas film, because it's the only film in the MCU that acknowledges Christmas as something that exists. So it does feel pretty grounded in that way, because they do have little hints of Christmas. And even the movie itself is pretty grounded. I mean, there are scenes that take place in middle America, in like small towns. And it's kind of surreal seeing all these character actors who are not, famous or well known, but you see them in this movie and you see them interacting with Robert Downey Jr., this like big megastar, and you see him interacting in these like very low-key small town settings. And it's interesting. It's just different. It definitely feels like a movie that was scaled back, because we saw Avengers. It was the biggest, most epic, most beautiful thing on the planet, and that's what we needed. If you want to keep the MCU fresh, if you want to keep it consistent, if you want to have it stay long term, you can't just do the same superhero versus supervillain trope again and again and again. You got to change it up. You got to take risks. You got to do twists that are weird and different like that. And you got to have directors like Shane Black who are very unique in their vision, and have them bring their vision to light. That's the only way you're going to keep things different and interesting, and you're going to keep people guessing. And now I see that. I see the reason why it had to take a twist like that. Where, I mean, I still felt disappointed that I didn't get the Dark Knight, of the Iron Man series. I got an action comedy. But now I see it as an action comedy, and I see it as enjoyable. And part of it is also because this film is part of a series in the MCU, so there are other films in the MCU that I like more than Iron Man 3. They kind of help make up for Iron Man 3's disappointment. But overall, I see it as, because it does continue this story of Iron Man. It does continue Tony Stark's character journey in terms of him having to learn his mortality. There's lots of great scenes, like for example where he has an anxiety attack. He's just sitting at like a diner with with Don Cheadle's character. Oh, why am I blanking on his name now? Rhodes, Colonel Rhodes. And so they're basically just sitting at a diner, and then Tony's signing autographs for a couple kids who are fans. And then he just, like, his heart starts pounding because he sees the kids' drawing of the attack on New York and the alien. And then he just starts really going into his Iron Man suit, and then he realizes, oh my god. And then and he's like, so Jarvis, what's going on? Am I having some kind of physical situation? And then Jarvis just goes, no, I think you just had an anxiety attack. And it's really, I respect the film for taking the events of what he went through in Avengers in terms of nearly sacrificing his life in that movie, and really explore what it feels like to have a near-death experience, and the anxiety and the fear and the having to realize. I mean, Iron Man is this big genius billionaire playboy philanthropist, so his character arc is focused more on having to accept the fact that he's not perfect, having to accept the fact that even he will one day die. It's inevitable. And the movie does a good job of helping him learn to make peace with that, while also living a fulfilling life. And it's a great film for that. And yeah, I definitely think it's worth checking out for that reason alone. So yeah, I guess the best recommendation I have for this film is, if you're not a comic book fan, or if you're not into this stuff, you might actually like it, because it kind of plays on the superhero, supervillain trope and does something unique and different with it. And funny. So yeah, talk to you later.